New confrontations between the U.S. Navy and vessels from Iran, adding to a growing list of Iran's provocative actions against the U.S., but this time, shots were fired.
All four boats you see here are Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps vessels approaching at a high speed and apparently on a collision course with a U.S. Navy destroyer in the Strait of Hormuz. This video shot from the USS Nitsa. It warned the Iranians with horns and flares to back off.
Weapons uncovered.
But at least two of the Iranian boats kept approaching, coming within 300 yards. Forcing the Nitsa to alter course Tuesday, the Iranian boats finally turning away. By Wednesday, a significant rise in tensions. Revolutionary Guard Corps boats harassing and endangering U.S. Navy vessels 3 times in 24 hours. The most dangerous, resulting in the U.S. Navy firing warning shots at the Iranians.
They did feel compelled ultimately to fire 3 warning shots. And the reason for that is they had used they had taken steps already to try and de-escalate this situation.
The Iranian defense minister says the country will confront any foreign vessel that trespasses into its territorial waters. Brigadier General Hossein Daghan said Iranian speedboats constantly monitor the developments and foreign vessels' movements in the Persian Gulf. Daghan added if any vessel enters Iran's waters, it will be warned, and if the move is deemed an act of aggression, Iranian naval forces will confront the trespasser. Daghan's comments come hours after Pentagon officials claimed Iranian speedboats, quote, harassed a U.S. warship in the Strait of Hormuz.
China and Russia held their third round of talks over the joint C-2016 maritime exercise in Zhanjiang City from August 16th to 21st. Sharing views on the plan and arrangements for communication and logistics support. We reached wide consensus and also inspected relevant sites and facilities. The exercise will focus on joint maritime defense actions.
According to Russian media, the exercise will take place from September 12th to 19th. China and Russia have stressed that it is routine and does not target any third party, but it has still drawn a great deal of attention from the United States and its allies. Australian media reports that Australia and the US plan to deploy maritime patrol aircraft and a conventional submarine to the exercise zone to monitor the drill.
North Korea just fired a ballistic missile from its submarine off its east coast. It's according to the US and South Korea. Tensions are escalating between the West and China. China has ignored the international community and continues to militarize the Chinese triangle there. Vietnam now moving missiles into the region. Japan becoming more aggressive, retooling its constitution. The Philippines military bases are active again with U.S. soldiers. If war were to break out in the South China Sea, how will this affect Americans who have become absolutely dependent on cheap goods from Asia?
Well, certainly America is in no position to afford a war. I mean, we're really in no position to afford peace. That's how broke we are. But certainly anything that would require the expenditure of more resources that we don't have would simply add to our problems. The government would have to run even larger deficits to absorb those costs, which means it would have to print more money. The Fed would have to create more money to monetize those deficits because Americans don't have the savings. It's not like World War II where we can go sell bonds and the American public is going to write checks. American public is broke. They have lousy jobs or they have no job at all. They can barely survive. They can't afford to pay their own bills, let alone the government's bills. So we're very, very vulnerable to any kind of increase in government spending. But even if there is no war, we're still going to have a financial crisis worse than 2008 because of the problems that already exist, let alone how much worse they would be to the extent that we had some overseas conflict to deal with.
Maybe you're like some people who've been wondering about some fast-moving helicopters flying in and around Boston. This has been happening all week long, and we started looking into what they're doing after getting emails and calls from many of you. Some people told us the choppers are flying close enough that their homes are shaking, and police are only telling us this is a training exercise.
Look closely and listen. You'll see and hear what some people saw last night above downtown Boston. We found this video posted to YouTube. Helicopters, one after another, flying low above the high-rises and close enough for people to notice. And not just last night, but all week. On Twitter, Fox 25 found numerous tweets from locals wondering what those helicopters were there for. Addison Hoover wrote, "Love Boston police and Marty Walsh, but maybe comically low helicopter flybys at 10 p.m. with no public viewing, not a hot idea." Chris Spinazzola also tweeted, "Is there a helicopter race over Boston tonight?" The helicopters have been flying all week in and around Boston. Boston police put out a community advisory to alert residents about a planned training exercise in conjunction with the Defense Department. They stress it's not in response to any world events. When I asked Boston police today for more information, they would only say the specifics are kept mysterious for good reason. Fox 25 also found these Black Hawk helicopters lined up today on the tarmac at a local airfield. When we asked about the helicopters, Fox 25 was directed to the Department of Defense, who wouldn't comment on the exercise. But at night, it is more like this, fast flying above neighborhoods and the city that will likely continue for the next couple of days.
And North Korea appears to have upgraded security facilities in and around its Sohae satellite launching station in the northwest of the country. An analysis of recent satellite imagery by the US-based North Korea monitoring website 38 North shows the inner and outer perimeters have been extended in recent years and are now 19 and 27 kilometers long. According to the website, the upgrade may be part of a larger construction plan. It could also mean the facility will be occupied by personnel from North Korea's official space agency or the military.
Russia has launched large-scale snap military drills, putting its troops on full combat readiness in districts bordering Ukraine and the Baltic states. Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said the decision to launch war games was made by President Putin as the supreme commander-in-chief of Russia's armed forces. Shoigu added that troops in the country's southern, central and western military districts, as well as the Air Force and paratroopers, were in full combat mode as of Thursday. NATO vowed at a summit in Warsaw in July to bolster its eastern flank to counter a resurgent Russia. Russia and NATO have been flexing their military muscles amid simmering tensions in Ukraine.
Earlier this week, Russia's Vladimir Putin reportedly told Egypt's President Abdel Fattah Sisi that he would be willing to host direct talks between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. The talks would take place in Moscow. Putin did speak to Netanyahu by phone Tuesday. According to press reports, they did discuss the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. Russia is now in the middle of Syria's civil war. As such, Vladimir Putin may now be making a serious bid to become a Middle East peacemaker.
A wave of terror attacks across Europe has brought the continent to a constant state of suspicion and fear. coronavirus, the British government has taken an unexpected and potentially shocking step. It's decided to remove dozens of CCTV cameras in London's tourist hotspots. Officials say they can't afford to operate the CCTV cameras.
Surveillance systems are a set way to fuel debate on privacy versus security. But what would happen without CCTV cameras? Home to Big Ben and Houses of Parliament, Trafalgar Square, Oxford Street, Buckingham Palace, Westminster Abbey and Soho, Westminster, a borough in central London, major tourist trap is scrapping its CCTV camera network to save money due to a running cost of up to £1 million a year. The cost of removing the cameras, however, is £300,000. Tourists are not too ecstatic about this.
I think that having CCTV around makes people feel a lot safer, especially at night.
Definitely not a good thing. As a tourist, you'd like to feel comfortable where you are.
And so do Londoners.
Keep the cameras because, as we've seen in Orlando and we've seen in Paris, and it continues to be a constant threat in the Western democracies, part of the fight against that is surveillance.
I don't think it's a good idea to try and save money that way.
Decades of experience at Scotland Yard, investigator and terrorism expert David Weidset says scrapping CCTV cameras can have major consequences.
I think it's a crazy idea, absolutely crazy. In terms of the fight against terrorism, the loss of the cameras is awful. If we go back to 2005 when we had terror attacks in London, on 7/7, 52 people were murdered. We used extensively CCTV. The loss of cameras in a situation like that will be absolutely devastating for the police.
That's also exactly what the police told us.
CCTV is a vital tool in combating crime. We are concerned that loss of camera coverage may mean London is less safe and security could be affected.
"24 hours ago, I had a chip implanted in my hand.
What I want you to do is just take a nice through your nose and slowly blow out through your nose.
Earthly help. And it's going to allow me to open doors. And it can operate the lifts.
Going down.
And it will allow me to interact with any system in the digital world. For instance, when I wave my phone over it, it can transfer my virtual business card. But it can be a little bit tricky. Ooh. Don't move. This technology's been going into our pets since the 1970s, but I can see the future is now, and I can see everyone getting one of these.
You're rushed to a hospital unconscious with no ID or medical history, but thanks to a microchip under your skin, it's all there.
I can see you asking yourselves already, why would I do this? Well, one word, convenience. Why should I have 5 cards in my wallet when I can replace it all with one chip in my hand?
While religious movies have become a boon for the box office, a new survey by the Pew Research Center has found nearly 23% of grown Americans are non-religious or agnostic. Even more startling, 78% of them were raised in a faith system and then left as adults. Upon further examination, nearly half of those religious nuns said a lack of belief caused them to leave their faith, others citing science, common sense, logic, and lack of evidence. Overall, religiously unaffiliated people are more concentrated among millennials at 35%. One respondent wrote he or she doesn't believe after learning about evolution in college. Another respondent said, "I'm doing a lot more learning, studying, and kind of making decisions myself rather than listening to someone else." But of the growing number of Americans who are not religious, many actually are seeking religion. Almost 20% said they were religiously unsure, meaning they either were spiritually open or were following their own interpretation.
The scenario is familiar: black community, negligence, and lead poisoning. But instead of Flint, Michigan, this is East Chicago, Indiana.
They got a water crisis there. We're going to have looks like we might have a land crisis here.
East Chicago's West Calumet housing complex, which houses about 1,000 residents, is being demolished due to lead-contaminated soil. The public housing complex was built in the shadows of 2 major lead plants in the 1970s. But it wasn't until 2009 that the Environmental Protection Agency deemed the area a Superfund site, meaning it was a hazardous environmental waste site that requires cleanup. The EPA's lead threshold for emergency cleanup is 1,200 parts per million, also called ppm for short. At one property in the complex, the lead concentration was found to be 75 times that in 2014. Residents were first publicly alerted of the contamination this May when the EPA posted these signs around the neighborhood.
It's horrible. Why were we the last to know?
Since then, the 1,000 or so residents have dealt with a whirlwind of developments. First, the mayor asked those living there to relocate while the EPA cleaned the soil. Shortly after, the housing authority announced the complex would force residents to leave. The local elementary school is also moving its students across town. The EPA is hoping to get everyone relocated in the next 4 to 6 months before demolition begins.
A new investigation's now underway into Havelock North's water contamination. The Hawke's Bay Regional Council has growing concerns about maintenance of the water bores linked to the tummy bug outbreak, which has affected thousands of people.
As scientists continue digging for answers, there's new tension between local authorities over who's to blame for Havelock North's water contamination. No one believes there's been deliberate contamination of the water. But these new tensions can't be reassuring Havelock North residents.
Hastings Council and the Regional Council are both blaming each other, but no, it doesn't help us at all.
Stop pointing fingers, start working together and actually solve this blooming problem. I mean, we've been boiling water now for so long.
And now at 5:30, the drought's so bad now in some areas that officials are actually asking residents to limit their showers. And there's no substantial rain in sight. The extreme drought conditions hitting Scituate very hard.
That town's reservoir is less than a quarter full. Bill Shields shows us the water restrictions are getting tighter by the day.
This is one of Scituate's main water reservoirs. It supplies about a third of the town's water. Today, you can see stumps and boulders. And grass is growing in the mud. Have you ever seen a summer like this one?
I never have. You know, we've been here, we moved here in the late 60s, and it's never been like this.
In the summer, the town's population almost doubles, so does water usage. So the strain on wells and reservoirs is immense this year with the drought. Now, the town has instituted a complete ban on outside watering, even after the summer residents leave.
Well, we're looking for relief from the fact that after Labor Day, the population goes down significantly. Now, in the past, people began irrigating their lawns right after Labor Day. This year, with a total water ban, that will not be allowed.
All across the state, lawns are brown.
Counties in our area reached severe drought status. The governor's drought advisory committee announced today that 9 counties in the state, including Sweetgrass, Stillwater, Carbon, and Yellowstone counties, have reached severe drought status. 7 more counties, including Park and Bighorn counties, are now under drought alert status. The determination is based on water supply and soil moisture data from several sources, including the Natural Resources and Conservation Service. The National Weather Service says the state's average temperatures for July were more than 4 degrees above normal.
Mussels are making a mess on Long Island. Hundreds of thousands of them washed up on the beach. But why?
Mussels by the pound? Think bigger. Much bigger. It's mussels by the mound and then some along the shore of the Long Island Sound in North Jamesport. They're dead and rotting away in the summer sun.
There was a terrible stench.
David Grunner says it was unbearable yesterday morning.
At first it smelled like a garbage truck.
Then he found the source.
We have never had mussels like this wash up on the beach.
They smell disgusting.
Yeah, what do they smell like?
Wet seaweed.
Anytime you have a massive die-off of marine life, it's not a good thing.
Dr. Christopher Gobler, professor of marine science at Stony Brook University, says it just got too hot for these blue mussels. They died, and the tide cycle carried them ashore.
It's been a hot summer, and actually the water temperatures are higher than we've seen in many years in Long Island Sound.
A trend that will change the makeup of our coastal waterways. He says it's possible as time marches on, there will be fewer mussels here.
Japan detected a rare type of tremor deep within the Earth using a network of seismic sensors. Strong storms create rapid movements within the ocean floor called a weather bomb. The spiraling movements originate from an evolving tropical storm over the North Atlantic Ocean, creating rippling effects that scientists then track to calculate the depths of our planet. The speed and direction of the tremors is completely dependent on the type of materials they pass through. Carefully measuring these movements from earthquake waves has allowed scientists to get a good idea on the structure and composition of the depths of our planet.
This entertainment center in Baton Rouge has been transformed into the state of Louisiana's largest shelter. On average, 1,000 people spend the night here. Those who occupy these beds don't have a choice.
Obviously a very large-scale disaster. Tens of thousands of homes were destroyed. So just for the Red Cross role in this, early estimates are as much as $30 million.
But so far, donations have brought in just under $8 million. With that money, the Red Cross has been able to provide temporary shelter, meals, and medical aid, as well as counseling to help heal psychological scars.
These folks have just lost everything. They don't really have any place else to turn at this point, and so it's clearly a very dramatic situation.
The greatest challenge here, finding temporary housing for displaced residents.
Statewide, the number of people staying in shelters skyrocketed to more than 11,000 after the flood.
The death toll from the earthquake in central Italy continues to climb. At least 250 people have been killed, and the number could rise as rescue teams continue to search for any remaining survivors. Sarah?
A town in ruins. Rescue teams have worked uninterrupted throughout the night, looking for survivors. They're exhausted and covered in dust, but there is a determination not to give up until everyone who is missing is accounted for. It's difficult and dangerous work, made even harder by the powerful aftershocks that still rock the town. Late on Wednesday, there were cheers in the nearby village of Pescara del Tronto when a young girl was pulled out of the rubble after being trapped for 15 hours. But back in Amatrice, the daughter of the couple who's missing in the collapsed apartment is still waiting anxiously for news of her parents. After hours of searching, painstakingly picking through the debris, the rescue teams finally find them. The moment she feared is realised. 2 more fatalities of Wednesday's devastating earthquake.
Meanwhile, back in this country, Indiana Governor and Vice Presidential candidate Mike Pence left the campaign today to visit Kokomo, which was slammed yesterday by tornadoes. At least one was an EF3 with winds of more than 150 miles per hour. Remarkably, no one was killed.
The gentleman beside me pushed me down. He was like, "Get down," and he put his arm around me. It chilled me.
Hannah Harris was in this Starbucks when a manager told all customers to run into the bathrooms because a tornado was headed their way.
And he saw the funnel behind Best Buy. And so then he shut the door in the bathroom, told everyone, "Close the door, it's coming."
Harris says about 20 people were huddled in the bathrooms as the twister collapsed the building around them.
Oh my gosh, Starbucks just got blown over.
It was devastating, but it was also just a relief to know that I came out alive in that. And really, I shouldn't have.
As many as 15 tornadoes touched down across Indiana Wednesday, leaving behind a trail of damaged cars, broken windows, and entire neighborhoods in shreds.
Neighbors found my dog. She's alive. That's all you can ask for.
This is all that's left of 54-year-old Becky Sweeney's home, where she's lived the past 16 years.
It is overwhelming, but you gotta do what you gotta do. You can't just lay down and die. God lets you live through it for a reason.